There have been further chaotic scenes outside the international airport in Kabul as thousands of Afghans try to flee the country following its fall to the Taliban. In response to the developing humanitarian crisis, the UK has said it'll take 20,000 Afghan refugees over a number of years. But in Parliament, where MPs were recalled for an emergency debate, Labour attacked the figure as too small. And the government came in for scathing criticism from some Conservative backbenchers over the withdrawal of Western troops that led to the Taliban's return to power. Tonight, Afghanistan's deposed president Ashraf Ghani, who's fled to the United Arab Emirates, said he had no intention of staying in exile. For our first report on Afghanistan tonight, let's go live to Kabul and join our correspondent Sikandar Kamani. Sikandar.
Well, residents here are still grappling with what this Taliban takeover will mean for their lives. In some parts of the city, things seem to be getting back to normal, but there are many who are still deeply, deeply anxious. Outside the airport, chaos continues. Thousands are still desperate to leave the country. Here, a girl terrified. The Taliban are coming for me, she cries. This family has been camped outside here for 5 days. The situation here is very bad, she says. No one wants to live here. Everyone wants to live in peace and to be able to study. We want to go anywhere that is safe. Despite assurances from the Taliban that anyone linked to the government will be given an amnesty, many here are deeply fearful for their future. And that's why we're still seeing these chaotic scenes at the airport. No one's clear yet what comes next. But political discussions have begun. This was the arrival of a deputy leader of the Taliban in Kandahar, their spiritual home. Whilst this is a member of the notorious Haqqani family, deeply entrenched in the Taliban's leadership, meeting with former President Hamid Karzai and other senior Afghan politicians. In a speech tonight from the Gulf, the former President Ashraf Ghani said he supported the efforts and hoped to return to the country. That seems unlikely. In the centre of Kabul, early signs everyday life is beginning to resume. Heavily armed Taliban patrols are all around. But shops and streets are busier than they've been since the takeover. It's not the same as before, says this man. People are scared, but it's better than the past few days at least. There are far fewer women out and about than before, and they're dressed more conservatively, though not in the all-encompassing burqa. Many major businesses have sent female employees home, unsure whether the Taliban will allow them to work. But there have been signs of defiance. This is a protest in support of the Afghan flag, replaced in some areas by the Taliban's. A number of demonstrators were reportedly shot dead in Jalalabad. Whilst this was another rally in eastern Afghanistan. Look at the huge Taliban convoy that's speeding towards it. The Taliban have been making conciliatory noises in public, but many fear they won't tolerate any challenges to their authority. Sikandar Kamani, BBC News, Kabul.
Many of those Afghans who want to come to the UK worked alongside British forces and diplomatic staff in the 20 years since the invasion following the 9/11 terror attacks. Britain's ambassador in Afghanistan says the aim now is to fly out about 1,000 people a day, but he admitted that time was limited. Our special correspondent Lucy Manning has been speaking to one Afghan interpreter who is desperate to escape with his family to Britain.
Faces hidden to try to protect them, but a message they want this country to see: UK, please do not leave us. Ahmed, not his real name, was an interpreter for British forces. Now he needs action, not words, trapped in Afghanistan.
Life is ended for us when Kabul collapsed. We are just left behind in a dark room.
Last week, before the Taliban's advance, he was finally given permission to come to the UK. The family celebrated. The next morning, he woke to find Kabul had fallen. he's now hiding.
The Taliban, some of the spokespeople have talked about not wanting revenge, but do you feel that they will come after you for being an interpreter?
Taliban are not trustable. As you know, if they find me, there will be no mercy. I've did a lot of patrols, missions with shoulder to shoulder with British armies as like a family, like a brother. It's a major threat for me. If I go out, if they know me, there will be no mercy and I will face it.
Ahmed worked with UK soldiers for 3 years. He said during fighting, the Taliban would target interpreters as they were the eyes and ears of the forces.
British soldiers were my brothers on that time. I served my country and I served Great Britain forces. I never complain about that, but the situation is now worse. And if everyone who works with coalition forces needs to be relocated as soon as possible.
A small team of British officials are trying to get some of the trapped and frightened Britons and Afghans to the UK. But while they have made it onto planes and many more wait outside the airport, even more stay hidden at home, unsure how they will get out.
How long have we got? It really depends on other things outside our control, the security situation, the approach of the Taliban. We're working on the basis of days, not weeks.
Ahmed now uses his English skills to plead for a way out.
Is there a message you would like to give to the Prime Minister about your family's situation and what help you need?
I just want him to provide a pathway to safety for me and my family. And I beg him.
Lucy Manning, BBC News.
In an impassioned debate in the Commons, MPs from all sides criticised the Prime Minister for the government's role in events in Afghanistan. The former Prime Minister, Theresa May, said it was incomprehensible that the UK was not doing more to maintain a presence. And MPs who've served in the armed forces spoke up for veterans who fought there and who now question what it was all for. But Boris Johnson argued that NATO's core mission in Afghanistan had succeeded. Here's our political correspondent, Ben Wright.
Prime Minister, have you let down Afghanistan?
A statement was written, the explanation prepared. Boris Johnson headed to Parliament, brought back from its summer break.
Prime Minister.
The chamber was crammed, shoulder to shoulder. Now restrictions are lifted.
The sacrifice in Afghanistan is seared into our national consciousness, with 150,000 people serving there from across the length and breadth of the United Kingdom. No matter how grim the lessons of the past, the future is not yet written. And at this bleak turning point, we must help the people of Afghanistan to choose the best of all their possible futures.
The Prime Minister said the US pullout from Afghanistan meant there was little Britain could do. Labour's leader agreed there was no military solution, but said the government had failed to prepare.
There's been a major miscalculation of the resilience of the Afghan forces and staggering complacency from our government about the Taliban threat. The result is that the Taliban are now back in control of Afghanistan. The gains made through 20 years of sacrifice hang precariously.
Supportive Conservative voices were the exception. Many backbenchers were scathing, including a former Prime Minister.
Was our knowledge of the position on the ground so inadequate? Or did we really believe this? Or did we just feel that we had to follow the United States and hope that on a wing and a prayer it would be all right on the night?
Watching on, a demonstration demanding all Afghans who worked for the UK can move here, and there is already a scheme in place. Ministers have said the UK will also take in up to 20,000 refugees over the next few years. In the Commons, there were cross-party calls for more.
It should have a minimum commitment of welcoming at least 35,000 to 40,000 Afghan refugees in the UK.
Numbers matter less than need. We need to reject this artificial distinction between resettlement and asylum.
Today's debate revealed the depth of anger and anguish at what's happened. The words spoken here will make little difference to the immediate situation in Afghanistan, but Boris Johnson looked isolated as MPs queued up to ask how a 20-year commitment unravelled so fast. No more so than those who had served in Afghanistan, fighting in a campaign that cost the lives of 457 servicemen and women.
Like many veterans, this last week has been one that has seen me struggle through anger and grief and rage, the feeling of abandonment of not just a country, but the sacrifice that my friends made.
The House of Commons, full for the first time in over a year, had rarely seemed so quiet.
Shameful.
Ben Wright, BBC News, Westminster.
Let's go back now to Sikandar Kamani, who's in Kabul for us. So, Sikandar, huge tension surrounding the airlift out of Kabul and also around how the Taliban are going to govern.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, there's still a sense of shock amongst many of the people I speak to here. No one expected things to unravel quite as quickly as they did. Remember, just 2 weeks ago, the Taliban didn't control a single major city. Now they're in control of the whole country, and it's really difficult to overstate how pervasive their presence here in Kabul is. I was walking along a street in the centre of the city a little earlier, and there was a fighter strolling casually along with a rocket-propelled grenade launcher on his back. But as you say, the Taliban's biggest challenges begin now in many ways. Now they've captured the country, what are they going to do with it? How are they going to reconcile their more hardline interpretation of Sharia law with the more modern, more democratic vision of the country that's been developed over the past 2 decades? We've seen in the east of the country the first show of public defiance against the Taliban with these protests in Jalalabad and other towns across the east of Afghanistan, the Taliban responding with violence there. Now, they've always insisted they're going to create an inclusive and Islamic government, but they've always been very vague, some suspect deliberately vague, about what that means. Afghans and the rest of the world will find out what it does mean in the coming days and weeks.
OK, Sikandar, thank you very much. Sikandar Kamani there in Kabul for us.